sick of gassing out by the third round. So today I'm going to tell you how to build a gas tank so that you can roll round after round. Now, the whole like build an endless gas tank is kind of an illusion, because at a certain point, we're just not going to have the capacity to keep pushing out energy. But by doing these things, you have almost an illusion of having an endless gas tank. So think of it like this. If you're not one of those guys who are gassing out, sitting out rounds, or just having really sloppy rounds because you're so exhausted, instead, you're one of those guys who can roll round after round. You don't look like you're huffing and puffing. And even if you do have those rounds where like you're huffing and puffing after a really hard round, in 60 seconds, you're recovered and ready to go. It builds that illusion that you have an endless gas tank. And this is obviously good because we have to train more. But you're going to have, when you have better gas tank, you usually get better quicker, because your rolls and, first of all, your rolls are more effective, right? Because they're higher quality, right? It's kind of like in the gym. If you just do like a hard set and you don't rest enough in between rounds, in between sets, like each set gets worse. So when you have a good gas tank, your rounds get better, but it's easier to be intentional. If you're like dying of breath and you can barely breathe and you're barely catching your breath, it's hard to be very intentional when you train. And that's a part of getting good, is not just being super consistent and training hard and training smart, but also being intentional, being like, okay, I need to really address this game. And again, that's really hard to do when you're constantly out of breath when you're gassing out. So let's get into it. So let's not ignore the first one, which should be obvious, that there is a skill component to this. So if you're a white belt, the more that you start to acquire some skills, the less you'll get winded, especially when we're talking about going against higher belts. You have to understand is that once you get technique, you don't have to use physical attributes as much, which is kind of the point of Jiu-Jitsu. It's not that we don't use strength with techniques, but we use techniques allows us to use a very small amount of strength. And this is good for a few reasons, because hey, we could possibly be a bigger opponent than us, but also this takes less energy. So one-on-one coaching program called the Relentless Grappler, and we do a virtual assessment. I see where you're at, and I build a program based on what you're at, and then we progress from there, whatever your physical goals are. So if you're trying to improve your cardio, if you're trying to improve your strength, improve your power, improve your durability so you're not injured all the time, if you're trying to build some lean muscle mass, if you're trying to maybe cut weight for health or for competition, we take care of that. So if that's something interesting, I'll just put a link in this description and you can go check that out. So I think the first thing I want to talk about is, because people don't think about this, is like strength is a big component of Jiu-Jitsu. If you think of like what Jiu-Jitsu is, it's basically like lifting weights. It's like low level lifting weights. Your muscles are constantly contracted, especially when you're talking about like gi, because usually you have grips and there's always some type of tension. So if you're not familiar with the weight room, you're probably going to have trouble with Jiu-Jitsu conditioning, because if you have a low level of strength, everything that you do takes a high percentage of your maximum strength. And that means that every time you try a technique, it's going to cost you more from a conditioning point. It's going to wind you. Now, if you're someone who has a high level of strength, when you do the same technique, it doesn't cost you that much, because if you're doing the technique properly, like I said before, you're using a low level of strength, so it's not going to like exhaust you like it would like a weaker opponent. And sometimes people think this is the opposite. It's because oftentimes we judge bigger, stronger guys and how they do in their first class. They get smoked and winded. And they're not necessarily getting smoked or winded because being strong and having muscle is bad for Jiu-Jitsu, is bad for your condition. It's because they're unskilled. You take that same person and you give them skills over the next 6 months, all right? That strength is not going to be a liability. It's going to be a huge asset for a bunch of reasons. One of them is he's going to have better conditioning. So we have to understand there's a strength component, a muscular endurance. So if you're not lifting weights, you definitely should be lifting weights, or that's just something that's always going to be a weak spot in your game, especially if you're going against people who are bigger and stronger than you. It's going to be conditioning, okay? So we have, if you're not aware of this, we have certain energy systems that our body uses to produce energy so we can do everything. So mainly it's broken down to two components. We have like an aerobic system. So that's what we do when we're doing easy things. Like right now I'm working the aerobic system. If I'm going for a walk, if I'm doing light cardio, that's mainly the aerobic system. Then we have, the aerobic system is great because it gives us a bunch of energy, but it's not very powerful energy. So if we're going fast, we can't really utilize it. because it takes a while to break down and produce that energy. Now, the second thing is anaerobic energy, which allows us to go hard and fast and be more explosive, and it runs out quickly. All right. And when it comes to jiu-jitsu, we use the aerobic system, and then we use the lactate system. All right. So what this means is that as far as condition goes, we want to do these two style of conditions. We either want to do something moderate pace and do it for a long period of time, say like 30 to 60 minutes, once or twice a week. And what this allows us to do, this allows our heart to actually grow bigger, so every pump delivers more oxygen and blood to our muscles, and it also allows our muscles to get good at using that oxygen blood basically for energy. So that's what the aerobic system does. The good thing about the aerobic system, because it's a low, moderate intensity, it doesn't really tax us, right? So it's not going to be very hard to recover from. Now, the anaerobic system is going to allow us to have high power outputs and then recover quickly from those high power outputs. The problem with this is that we have to use this sparingly based on how many times you train. I'm going to kind of go over this because it's a lot more stressful. It's a high intensity training modality, so it's going to take a lot out of you, so it's harder to recover. So these are going to be things where, say I do hill sprints. Maybe say I sprint up a hill as fast as I can for 15 seconds, I walk down. Or it could be something like I'm on the air like 10 seconds all out, then I'm going nice and slow for 60 seconds. Because of the intensity, I don't need to do this for a long time to see my body to adapt. I can do probably between 5 to 15 intervals total once or twice a week, and I'm going to see some type of gains here. Now, what I'm going to say is, if you're someone who trains a lot, like I train a lot, I train 6 days a week, it's probably better off that if you just stick to aerobic conditioning, and you're probably going to see a big improvement with that. Because if you're rolling 6 days a week, you probably have days where you're actually having these really high output rounds. So it's not like you're not getting any of that high energy systems with your jiu-jitsu specific work. So in that case, I think it's smart just to train you 5-6 days a week and maybe just do 1 or 2 aerobic sessions per week. If you're someone who is on the mat 2 or 3 days a week, you probably have better recovery. So you could probably get away with doing 1 or 2 high intensity interval sessions. Well, to me, it's like, say if you strength train 2 or 3 times a week, what you might do is you might do like those intervals training, but maybe do it after only 1 or 2 of your strength sessions. And real quick, it doesn't have to be a lot. Maybe you only do like 5 intervals after your strength session. So as you get through all your compound lifts, you do some accessory work. If you have time, jump on the air bike, go 15 seconds hard, 45 seconds slow, and maybe you do that for 5 rounds. You do that like once or twice a week after a lifting session. And then if you have time, maybe you squeeze in like an aerobic day on the weekend, like maybe do like 30 minutes of like walking with a vest, or maybe do 30 minutes of really light jogging. Or if you have any like machines at home, you can do like 30 minutes on the rower or the air bike, so something like that. To me, that's the best of both worlds, because you can get everything as long as you can recover it. But if we really want to prioritize and say that you're worried about recovery and you don't think you're having trouble with recovery as it is, again, if you train more than 3 days a week, if you're more towards that 4, 5, 6 days a week, I would just focus on the aerobic cardio right now, and I think you're going to see a big change with that. And then again, if you're not really getting in the mats that much, I think maybe hitting 1 or 2 interval sessions is going to be a big benefit